Okay, good morning and good day to everyone. So, we are done with lesson 1, 2, and 3. Those are nouns, verbs, and modifiers. And now we move on to lesson 4, 5, 6, and 7. So, under grammatical accuracy pa din tayo, we have the first one, those what we call auxiliaries. At the end of this topic, you should be able to identify some common auxiliary verbs, explain also the uses of auxiliary verbs, and of course, use them correctly. Just as praise is auxiliary to prayer, so is optimism and enthusiasm to the learning of grammar. In many ways, the following Romans point of view, the verb is the most important of all parts of speech. The Latin derivation verbum, which means the word, stresses this view, which brings us back to many years of the study of verbs, but whose mastery remains elusive to many learners. Remembering the good old days when we have first started learning grammar, we remember that verbs are doing words or action words, and for the vast majority of verbs, this is a reasonable description. So all we know before, verbs are action words, words that tell about actions. However, we should remember that apart from main verbs of doing, such as dance, sing, eat, sleep, and walk, there are also auxiliary or helping verbs. We have the be, such as have and will, that play a role or that are also important when we are talking of learning grammar. So what are auxiliaries? Auxiliaries are a closed word class. They can be divided into two subclasses. We have the primary auxiliaries and the modal auxiliaries. Under primary auxiliaries, we have be, have, and do. The be verbs, the have verbs, and the do verbs. On the side of modal auxiliaries, we have will, would, shall, should, may, might, can, could, must, and others. We have earlier introduced the distinction between main verbs such as dance, sing, eat, sleep, and walk, and auxiliary verbs such as be, have, and will. So, we have here an example. Cheska dances the waltz. Whereas, an auxiliary verb such as will cannot occur alone. Cheska will blank, will the waltz. So it's incomplete. So an auxiliary verb occurs with a main verb. So you say, Cheska will dance the waltz. Will there is already an auxiliary verb because it was used there to help the main verb. The main verb there is dance. And the function of that helping verb there is to express prediction. So, auxiliary verbs are used together with the main verb to show verb tense or form a negative or question. So, for example, does Sarah write all his own reports? So, kung mawawala yung word na does doon, Sarah write all his own reports, you will never know that that is as a question. The secretaries haven't written all the letters yet, so it shows negative. Tonette is writing an email to a client at the moment. So, those are the uses of auxiliary verbs. By expressing tense, so it provides a time reference. Tapos na ba ito? Will this be accomplished in the future or it's still being done at present? It also shows grammatical aspect, how verbs relates to the flow of time, and then modality, and then voice, and then adds emphasis to a sentence. How to identify an auxiliary verb? So, action verbs are used to depict activities that are doable. Linking verbs are used to describe conditions. So both action verbs and linking verbs can accompany auxiliary verbs including the three main ones, do, be, and have. So itong mga do, be, and have na ito, they are sometimes always with the main verb. So, Here are examples of sentences and explanations on how auxiliary verbs work. Number 1 is Wilson caught his thumb in the car door as coffee spilled from his cup onto his favorite shirt. Wilson is always spilling things. So, is there is very important. It links the subject to the predicate, or it links the subject to the main verb, to the phrase where there is the main verb. Since Wilson is also accident prone, he should have been drinking coffee. So sometimes it emphasizes an action that should be done. So he should have been drinking coffee from a mug with a lid which would not have spilled on his favorite shirt. So these auxiliary verbs are also used to explain something. So the first one does not contain any auxiliary verb, just main verbs. But number 2 and 3 is spelling. So is spelling, there is the word always there, which indicates that frequency. And then should have been and would have stayed expresses time relationship, an explanation of cause and effect. Now we have here the 3 common auxiliary verbs, the have, the do, and the be. Have is a very important verb. It cannot stand alone in all its tenses, including has, have, having, had, hadn't, or had not. So example, Christian has a large coffee stain on his shirt. So has here is an action verb. Why? Because there is no other verb there. Christian has bought a new shirt to replace the one that was ruined earlier. So has is an auxiliary verb because we can see there the main verb which is bought. Now, when has, have, having, had, hadn't, had not are standing alone, wala silang kasamang verb, they are considered action verb. But if itong mga has, have, had na ito ay they are not used with another verb, they are action verb. But if they are with another verb, they are considered an auxiliary verb. Christian should have been more careful. Have there is also an auxiliary verb because we have the verb phrase should have been. Okay. How about do? Do can be used as an action verb that stands alone in all its tenses, including to do, does, done, did, didn't, doesn't, and did not. Example here. Because he spills things so often, John Paul does more laundry than most people. So there is no other verb besides does there. Does lang yung nandiyan. Therefore, does is an action verb. Kasi yung do, does, did, nagiging auxiliary verb lang sila kapag ganito. John Paul didn't put his coffee in a cup with a lid. So, we have there the main verb which is put. Kaya, yung didn't dyan, it's considered an auxiliary verb. Next, John Paul does not always spill things but it happens a lot. Bakit siya considered na auxiliary verb? Because you have the verb phrase doesn't always spill. And spill is your main verb. Always is the frequency. So, nandyan lang yung word na doesn't just to help them emphasize that John Paul does not always spill things. Therefore, yung doesn't is considered an auxiliary verb. Be or to be is also an important verb that has a multitude of uses. When you say multitude, maraming paggagamitan. It can be used as an action verb that stands alone in all its tenses. So, kagaya rin ng do at saka have, hindi lang auxiliary verb ang kanilang gamit. They can also act as action verb. So, example here is, Angelo is messy. So, yung is dyan is considered an action verb. There is no other verb in the sentence, it's only is. Although he is always complaining about his accidents, Angelo fails to pay attention. The word is there is considered an auxiliary verb because you have the main verb complaining. Angelo is going to be doing extra laundry for the rest of his life. To be is considered an auxiliary verb because is going to be doing is your verb phrase. Now we also have the modal auxiliary verbs which were discussed earlier. Yung mga can, could, something like that. So, here are the examples of auxiliary verbs and verb phrases. So, Anna is taking Jerry to the airport. So, it's an auxiliary verb because you have the verb there, taking. If she doesn't arrive on time, she'll have to take a later flight. You have the main verb arrive, therefore doesn't is an auxiliary verb. So, did Johnny bring coffee? Did is an auxiliary verb that signals question. So, your main verb is bring, therefore did is an auxiliary verb. The main auxiliary or helping verbs are be, have, and do. They are used with main verb to help them form specific tenses as well as negatives and questions. Be is used as an auxiliary with the ing form of the verb to form the continuous. She is living in the Philippines. We were going to the cinema. Be used with the past participle of the main verb to form the passive. The street was covered in mud. These computers are made in America. Have and had are used as auxiliaries along with the past participle and past tense. So I have changed. She has completed. Had visited. Be and have are also used as auxiliaries to form negative questions. She is not finished yet. Haven't you finished yet? Was the wallet found on the street? So those are the uses of be, have, and have. So those are the topics or the ideas and information on auxiliary verbs. So always remember that the other term for auxiliaries are helping verb. Now when we say helping verb, they are just there to help the main verb, though they can also stand as the main verb sometimes if you cannot see or spot any other main verb in the sentence. Next, we move on to connectors. So here, you need to identify connectors in sentences, use connectors appropriately, and complete sentences with the right connectors. So, the metaphor of good leaders with grammar is best understood in making connections. Kasi if there are connectors, parang more organized yung pagde-deliver ng statement. More emphatically, good grammar, like good leaders, requires the relating well of elements that make up a thought in a sentence. But you do not just connect sentences na kung ano-ano ang ginagamit mong connector because the connector that you use will also lead you to the correct meaning of what you are telling. So, when our elements do not link or connect, we often hear remarks such as the intended pun, what's the connect? Or, that is ungrammatical. So, which disturb our train of thoughts. So, look at the sentences. So, the library on 5th Avenue in New York City is one of the best places to do research. It has hundreds of the most respected magazines and journals in the world. So, there is nothing wrong in this sentence, but a word that connects these two sentences is often added so that when you add a connector, it would clearly show the relationship between the sentences and ideas. Because there's nothing wrong on that two sentences, but it's way easier to understand if you put a connector. So, I am going to introduce to you connectors that are commonly used in professional, business, and university writing. Although the words have different grammatical names, they share one thing in common. So, they all continue or add ideas, and these words are not interchangeable. In other words, You cannot remove one of these words and add any other. The best way to explain this is words is to simply give you examples. So one thing they have in common is that they are usually attached to clauses. That means they are attached to group of words that contain subject and verb. So what are connectors? Connectors are also called conjunctive words. So they link similar elements in a sentence. Kaya nga sila tinatawag na connector because their function is to link words in or link similar elements in a sentence. Noun to noun, clauses to clauses, phrases to phrases, verb phrase to verb phrase, or something like that. Now, there are 4 categories. We have coordinating conjunction, subordinating conjunction, correlating conjunction, and the conjunctive adverbs such as therefore or however. What do we mean when we say coordinating conjunction? So when we say coordinating connectors or conjunction, they give equal value to the 2 elements that they coordinate. They must be placed between the 2 elements that they coordinate. So the central coordinators are yung and, but, and, or. So your coordinating connectors are and, but, and, or. So examples, I enjoy novels and short stories best of all. So, ang pinag-connect nyo ay novels and short stories. I can and will speak. So, can and will ang kanyang pinag-connect. They are both modals. They'll win or they'll lose. So, win and lose. They will win and they will lose. So, that's the elements na pinag-connect nila. So, when you try to look at it, we have a similar element. So, verb tsaka verb. Ganon siya. Noun tsaka noun. Next, this present is not for Peter but Paul. So, Peter and Paul yung kanyang pinag-connect dito. They are both persons. I bought a new dress that was not red but pink. Red and pink, they are both colors. So, that's the use of coordinating conjunction. Give equal value to 2 elements that they coordinate. Examples are and, but, and, or. Next, we have subordinating conjunction. When we are talking of subordinating conjunction, we are actually linking 2 clauses within a single sentence. So, we have types of subordinate clause are introduced by subordinating conjunctions and others are not. So we have the common subordinating conjunctions such as as, because, and since, so and so that, although and though, after, before, until, while, if, unless, as long as, provided, whenever, whatever, that, so something like that. So they are used as subordinator and as preposition. So I saw her after I had my interview. After. As preposition, I saw her after the interview. So, it could act, so yung preposition na after, it could act as subordinator and at the same time as preposition. So, there are 2 sorts of subordinate clauses. Most subordinate clauses can come either before or after the main clause, but direct questions, relative clauses, and other subordinate clauses introduced by that must normally be placed after the main clause just like a coordinated clause. So, example, I'm going to Cebu because I've got a new job. So, your subordinating conjunction is because since it's raining, I'm going to the cinema this afternoon. So, yung main clause nyo ay I'm going to the cinema this afternoon and your subordinating conjunction is before. After I finished work, I went straight home. So that's also written before the main clause. Until they opened a new factory they could not produce, it's also before. If you see anything suspicious, let me know at once. Next, number 6, he asked the policeman if he knew a good restaurant. He asked the policeman, that is your main clause, and your subordinating conjunction connector is if, so it's also written at the middle. correlative conjunction. So, malalaman yung correlative conjunction siya if its use is to correlate words or phrases or clauses. When you say correlate, magka-relate yung first statement to the second statement. That in that case, when you remove the second statement, the first statement nawawala na yung kanyang meaning or it becomes useless. So, example is both and, not only but also, either or, neither nor, whether or not. So, example here, we have this is both stupid and incomprehensible. I can understand both his reasons and his arguments. Not only can I hear him, I see him too. It's either right or wrong. So, when you try to observe these examples, they are actually correlating ideas. This is both stupid and incomprehensible. It's either right or wrong. So, right and wrong are related to each other. So, unlike doon sa ating coordinating connectors, kapag doon sa coordinating conjunction, they are just trying to connect similar elements with equal value. Dito naman is nire-relate lang nila. I'll go there whether I am allowed to or not. So, there is what we call a relationship of the statements or of the words that are being connected. Kaya siya tinatawag na correlative conjunction. So, here, most traditional grammars just repeat the established classification of conjunctions as being either coordinating or subordinating. This neat classification works in most cases, but for some words it does not. But though can often be used as synonyms, yet but is listed as a coordinator and though as subordinator. So, he took part in the competition, but he did not win. And he took part in the competition, though he did not win. Similarly, the old-fashioned coordinator for has generally been replaced in modern English by as or by because, which are classed as subordinators. So, tignan natin dito. Though he did not win, he took part in the competition. Though he did not win, he took part in the competition. This suggests that the pertinent distinction between types of conjunction is not actually one of function but one of usage. As for so, implying consequence, both David and Crystal and Kirk Greenbaum consider it as subordinator, but many dictionaries and most internet grammar sites, including Wikipedia, call it coordinator. So, do not overuse connectors. It is unnecessary to use them everywhere in your writing. Use connectors when you want to do the following. You want to show a relationship between ideas and you add information that builds on the idea and the preceding sentence. So, those are the uses of connectors. But, when you are delivering a speech, when you are giving procedure, or when you are explaining something, it is good to use this what we call connectors in order for your listeners na ito pala yung connection ng ideas na ito. Ito pala yung ganito yung kanyang arrangement. This information pala is connected to this one. So parang ganun yung magiging effect if you use connectors. Because if you fail to use connectors for some ideas that are connected, parang magiging isolated yung mga statements. Magkakahiwa-hiwalay ang kanilang pag-intindi. Moving on to determiners. So here you should be able to identify and correctly use determiners, also referred to as noun markers or articles. So other term for determiners are noun markers or articles. Of course, use determiners accurately within sentences and apply rules on the use of a, an, and the. So what are determiners? Determiners are closed word class. They are words which come first in noun phrase and which determine the noun. Kaya nga siya determiner because it signals that there is a noun. Silang nagde-determine the that word ay merong noun. So, this tree, as opposed to that tree. Determiners, such as those some introduce noun phrases. The reason why they come first in the noun phrase is that they specify the most general. Now, there are classes of determiners. Determiners, like adjectives, give information about nouns and pronouns, but they do not, strictly speaking, describe nouns and pronouns, which is one of the definitions of an adjective. And that is one reason why modern grammarians like to distinguish them from adjectives. So determiners are sometimes called function words because they have a very little meaning in themselves. They merely perform a function in the sentence. True adjectives, on the other hand, are called content words because they have some sort of finite content or meaning when they stand alone. So, ang pagkakaiba ng determiner tsaka ng adjective, ang determiner ay function word. Ang adjective ay content word. Kapag function word, if they stand alone, wala na silang kahulugan. While adjectives, if they stand alone, they still have with them their meaning. So, here is an example with determiners from each class. So, all those other people. So, all is your predeterminer. Those is your central determiner. And other is your post-determiner. So, pwede kang magkaroon ng maraming determiner in a sentence. Now, central determiners fall into several subclasses. We have the articles, demonstratives, possessives, numbers, interrogatives, relatives, and indefinites. Kapag ka-articles, we have the and a, and as well as an. Demonstratives naman is this, the, this, and those. So, demonstrative, parang it's showing you where's the position of the noun or pronoun. Possessives, it shows ownership, my, our, your, his, and her. Numbers are of course 1, 2, 3, or pwede ring ordinal such as first, second, and third. Interrogatives, these are determiners that signals that the statement is a question. Next, relatives, which, whose, whatever, whichever, and indefinites, some, any, no, enough, so neither, all of you. Now, the article. There are two articles in English, the definite article the and the indefinite article a and an. An author's use of something as apparently insignificant as the definite instead of indefinite article can have a major impact on the resonance of a text. The definite article. When we say definite article, it refers back to a person or thing already identified. You describe a man with a bird. Is this the man? So, a and the can be used as definite article. It defines or marks someone or something as the only one, the Holy Bible, the Prime Minister. If it's only one, he used the definite article the. It indicates a whole class or group or clan, the reptile family, the English working class. Juan is stressed, it indicates uniqueness. Callas was the soprano of her graduation. It was the pub for live folk music and real ale. Now we have the indefinite article. The indefinite article a and an has the following function. It is a form of 100 years ago, a mile wide, wait a minute. Next, it singles out or introduces a particular or specific person. I'm going to tell you a story about a girl called Sally. So it has an indefinite meaning of any. It was as big as a horse. A peninsula is surrounded by water on three sides, and it is distributive. 50 pieces a kilo. So, parang alam mo na per kilo, it's 50 pesos. So, we also have here indefinite determiners. These words function as determiners only when they modify a noun. The versions that stand alone are pronouns. All the good work is ruined. Both climbers are missing. Climbers, it refers to climbers. Either bus goes into town, so they are signaling bus. Neither answers is right, so referring to answer. We see her every Tuesday. Each man had a gun. Each, that is signaling the occurrence of man. So exemption to the rule for using indefinite articles. So indefinite articles a and an are used on the basis of the phonic sound of the following word. If a vowel is pronounced as a consonant, we will use a before it. Of course, you already know this. If a consonant is pronounced as a vowel, we will use a before it. There are no articles with the following with names of countries, such as he's returned from Canada. So you don't say he's returned from the Canada, he's returned from. So do not place an article there. The is used with the names of countries that stand for a group. For example, the United States, the West Indies, the Philippines. So they stand for a group. With names of languages, French is spoken in Ireland. So you don't say a French, you only say French is spoken in Ireland. With names of meals, lunch is at midday, dinner. So you don't say the dinner is in the evening, the breakfast. So you don't do that. You say that. With people's names, if singular, so Hassan is coming to the party. So you don't say a Hassan is coming to the party because it is redundant. A signals singular form. With titles and names, so Prince Charles is Queen Elizabeth's son. President Kennedy, so you do not say the President Kennedy, you only say President Kennedy. With profession, engineering is a useful career, so then you say the engineering. With years, 1947 was a wonderful year. Do you remember 1980? So you don't say, do you remember the 1980? Do you remember a 1980? Because that is wrong. With countable nouns, rice is the main food in Asia. Milk is often added to tea in England. So when there are uncountable nouns, you don't say a or you don't place a or an. With the names of individual mountains, lakes, and islands, she lives near Taal Lake. Huwag mo nang lagyan ng article doon. Taal Lake na lang. 100 Islands na lang because they are names of individual mountains. And of course, in some fixed expressions, by car, by train, on foot, on holiday, on air, at school, at work, in church, in bed. So they are already fixed expressions. And the last one, we have the intensifiers. So be rather sparing than liberal in the use of adjectives. One which expresses your meaning is better than two, which cannot best do no more than express it, while the additional one may possibly do harm. But the error most common in the use of adjectives is the endeavoring to strengthen the adjective by putting an adverb before it, and which adverb conveys the notion that the quality or properly expressed by the adjective admits of degrees as very honest, extremely just. A man may be wiser than another wise man, an act may be more wicked than another wicked act, but a man cannot be more honest than another. Every man who is not honest must be dishonest, and every act which is not just must be unjust. So parang gumagamit lang siya ng adjective with the degree. But most of the time, we should only use intensifiers when we are speaking. If we are writing formally for business or in academic writing, the use of intensifiers can be considered a lazy way to write. So, intensifiers are ginagamit lang when you are talking para to give emphasis. Kaya nga intensity, magbigay ng emphasis sa yung sinasabi. That pie is really good. The pie is good. Parang wala lang, it's just a normal pie, but it's just normally good. But when you say the pie is really good, there is an intensity. There is a higher degree of the goodness, kung gaano ganda yung quality ng pie na yun. The meeting was very long. So when you say the meeting was long, so it's normally long. But when you say the meeting was very long, so it was done in few hours. So the above sentences are pretty casual for formal writing. What should be used instead are strong adjective, not intensifiers. So sinasabi ko kanina, kung nakikipag-usap ka lang or when you are speaking, gamit ng intensifiers. Pero kapag nagsusulat ka, gumagawa ka ng formal is, so you say, the pie is delicious. So kung really good and delicious are two similar, they have similar meanings. The meeting was unending. So, that means the meeting was very long. So, what are intensifiers? Intensifiers are another special category of modifiers. They have opposite effect of qualifiers and strengthen or weaken the meaning of the words and phrases that they modify. They are either positive or negative. So, examples of positive intensifiers: very, to, rather, extremely, so, really, absolutely, totally, exceptionally, completely, utterly, particularly, greatly, highly, seriously. So, example, the boss was very adamant that the software be changed this way, so we had better listen to his demands. Very adamant. I completely agree with Vichy even though we never agree on anything. Rose really wanted to kiss Matthew that night. So, intensifying adverbs are used to mean extremely or completely in the sentence. The expressions marked with are very informal. So, Jane really enjoys doing housework. Really. You should see her flat. It's always spotlessly clean. So, you see the uses of intensifiers. So, it should be observed that many of these intensifiers have the ending ly. This is a word ending that means like. It can turn an adjective into an adverb. So, the pizza is incredible. The pizza is incredibly delicious. So, incredible in the first sentence is an adjective, but when you add li, already it becomes an adverb because it modifies that pizza, the delicious pizza. That glue is remarkably strong. That glue is incredibly strong. That glue is amazingly strong. That glue is unusually strong. So all the sentences tell the same thing, that the glue is stronger than any other glue that we have tried. So some intensifiers, however, do have different meanings. Some works best in positive sentences, and some work best in negative sentences, such as in the following. The sunset is amazingly beautiful. So kapag positive yung iyong sentence, you use a positive, you use amazingly, but the sunset isn't beautiful at all. So fitted lang yung at all if you use negative sentence, only in some examples. So those are your connectors, determiners, intensifiers, and auxiliary verbs. I hope you learned a lot. Please have a summary again of this discussion video. I will not upload any picture anymore. You just have to summarize it according to our discussion, and of course, expect activities to be uploaded in your lens. Now, if you have questions or clarifications, please feel free to drop them in our group chat. Thank you so much and God bless. Please do not share the link of this video. This video or screen record is just created for educational purposes. So, if there are mistakes or if there are other errors, please feel free to send it in our GC. Thank you.